question on consciousness and awareness. When you speak to the knowing, from what I experience, awareness is very dry, neutral, almost like just a blank board. When you bring up knowing from this field, I become kind of like, it's almost like, is it the mind that appropriates it and make it into an object? So knowing everything that comes up, I became confused with the mind.
Okay. I use the words consciousness, awareness, and knowing synonymously. They all mean exactly the same thing in this approach. But let me explain why more and more over the last year or so I've started using the word knowing instead of awareness or consciousness. The term awareness is very good for the initial stage of the teaching when we distinguish consciousness or awareness from its objects. Most people's attention is exclusively involved with thoughts, feelings, sensations, and perceptions. So as a first step, the teaching says, notice that there is something that is aware of thoughts, feelings, sensations, and perceptions. And in this way, the teaching draws attention to awareness as opposed to the objects, in order to establish the presence and the primacy of awareness. And this is a legitimate distinction to make for one whose attention is exclusively involved in the objects of experience. So this is a valid first step. The second step is then to contemplate the nature of awareness. Now, the only thing, in inverted commas, that can be aware of awareness is obviously awareness.
Right.
There is no other aware entity present other than awareness itself that could know anything about awareness. Mm-hmm. So the second step is this awareness being aware of awareness, being aware of being aware.
Oh, self-awareness.
Yes.
Being aware of itself.
Awareness, being aware of itself.
Okay.
It is a resting of awareness
Okay.
in and as itself, simply knowing its own being.
Right.
And this is the second step where, and it's in most cases it's a gradual process where our attention actually, or the mind or attention, sinks into its source. Awareness sinks deeper and deeper into itself, and in doing so is gradually relieved of its superimposed limitations. And at some point there is this recognition that awareness's nature is empty of objects, innately peaceful, without any limits, not in time and space. So that's the second step. In other words, the recognition that awareness is eternal and infinite. But now, the third step involves going back to the objects of experience from which we have somewhat artificially separated ourselves in the neti-neti process, the I am not my thoughts, I am not my feelings process. So this involves a collapsing of the apparent distinction between awareness and its objects. For this third stage, I use the word knowing rather than awareness. I usually use the word knowing, and for this reason, because there is no real distinction between awareness and its objects. In other words, the metaphor of the sky and the clouds is useful for the first stage of the teaching, but in this third stage we forget the sky and the clouds metaphor. We go to the screen and the image. analogy, because in the screen and the image there's only one thing there. There's not the sky with the clouds inside it. There's just the screen. And remember, this is not an old-fashioned projector. It's a laptop where the light, the image, and the screen are all the same thing. So the image is just a modulation of the screen. So in the same way, all you know of your experience now is mind. Yes?
Yes.
All you know now, all that each of us knows, or rather, all that each of our minds know, is the experience of thinking, hearing, seeing, touching, feeling, imagining. Yes? That's all that each of our minds are knowing. Now, and whatever it is that knows the experience of thinking, feeling, sensing, perceiving, is not separate from thinking, sensing, and perceiving. Yes? Mm-hmm. You are now, let's just call it thinking and perceiving. It's easy, but understand all of objective experience. Go now to the experience of thinking and perceiving. Now, whatever it is that knows thinking and perceiving is one with thinking and perceiving. It's not separate from it in the background, witnessing it from a distance. Yes? So
yes.
Thinking and perceiving is, we could say, it's pervaded by knowing.
Exactly.
But even that is not right,
Right.
because it suggests that there is something called thinking and perceiving, which is pervaded by something else called knowing. We would never say the image is pervaded by the screen. That would suggest there is something called an image with its own existence that is then pervaded by the screen. But there isn't a thing called an image. The thing, the stuff that is really there, is the screen. The image is just a modulation of the screen. So thinking is just a so for this reason we say that the screen is the reality of the image, or the essential irreducible element of the image. Likewise, knowing, pure knowing, is the essential irreducible element of thinking and perceiving. It is the stuff that thinking and perceiving are made out of. So here we have collapsed the apparent distinction. There was never a real distinction. We have collapsed the apparent distinction between consciousness and its objects.
So, can we know this without these objects
When you
by
say
itself?
Sorry? When you say, can we know this
the-
without these
this.
objects, what
In
are you
other
referring
word,
to as this?
We are using these objects as a pointer to this, let's say, blank screen. So I keep drawing back to the awareness, which, it became an object of
Yes.
of
Yes, you see,
another screen.
that's it. You're
So it became a screen behind a screen behind a screen.
Exactly. No, you're mixing these two different analogies up. In the first stage, it is legitimate because of the mind's fascination with objects. It is legitimate to propose that awareness is the witnessing subject of those objects. So awareness is the witnessing subject, and thoughts, feelings, sensations, and perceptions are the witnessed objects. So here we are reifying awareness. We are making awareness into a thing, albeit an open, empty, transparent, self-aware thing. Yes? There is still a very subtle objectivity to consciousness. It's an object. It is a subject of experience as opposed to the object of experience. In other words, we're still in duality here. We could call it enlightened duality. So in the third stage, we are collapsing this distinction. We can no longer we don't remove ourselves from thinking and perceiving in order to know knowing. The knowing is no longer in the background of experience. It is experience. Let me give you another analogy. And this is watching a TV screen, but now this is a conventional screen that you're watching from your sofa. For one whose attention is completely lost in the movie, it is legitimate to say, see that the screen is behind the movie. It's not really behind the movie, but if we are exclusively focused on the objects in the movie, it is, as a first step, legitimate to say that the screen is behind it. Once that's the awareness plus objects step. Once that becomes clear, then you can say to your friend, actually, look more closely. The screen is not behind the image. There is no such thing as an image with a screen behind it. You're looking at one thing, not two things. The one thing that you are looking at, the reality of the movie, is the screen. In fact, there is no such thing as a movie. There is no thing as a movie with its own independent existence. The only thing that exists, and in fact it doesn't exist, it doesn't stand out of, it is the screen. And the apparent existence of the movie is a modulation of that ever-present screen. Mm-hmm. Now, if we translate that to our experience, the only thing that exists in experience, and it doesn't really exist because it doesn't stand out, it is, I am, is consciousness. And all thought, sensation, and perception, they are not objects of this knowing or consciousness. They are this knowing or consciousness modulating itself. And that is why it's for this reason that I call mind the activity of consciousness. There is no entity called a mind. There is no such thing as a mind. The only thing in existence is consciousness. The thing in itself is always consciousness. There are no other things, and consciousness, of course, is not a thing. So I use the word knowing to try not to create this artificial distinction between thoughts and consciousness, between objects and consciousness. So now look around your experience. All your experience consists of seeing, hearing, thinking, touching. But ask yourself the question, is there anything present in any of those experiences other than the knowing of them?
No.
No. You see, knowing is not just is not just the background of experience, it is the reality of experience. It is what is real in all experience. That doesn't mean to say that all of this is not real. Experience is absolutely real. There is no such thing as an unreal experience. But what is important is to ask, what is it about experience that is really real? And it is consciousness only, or knowing.
And yet, in the relative world that we live in, which is you need to interact with the next person and the next person, as you walk through the street or as you're in classroom, you are aware of all of this. So, in that sense, I feel the duality of it, even though I know that this is also part of me.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? So
that's fine. You can go back to the consciousness plus objects stage if you want to. It's fine to. It's perfectly legitimate to realize that you are the open empty space of awareness, and thoughts and images and sensations are flowing through you. That is a perfectly legitimate
Okay.
stage to go back to. But you can also experiment with the understanding that what you are is not just the open empty space in which all experience appears and with which it is known, but also out of which it is made. This is the step where we collapse the distinction between the witness and its objects. But you can go back and forth from the two because they're both perfectly legitimate positions.
Yeah.
Some teachings never go beyond the witness plus objects stage. In fact, I would say most don't. And it's perfectly okay. There are beautiful teachings that are based on the awareness plus objects stage.
Okay.